People don't flinch at your scars until you start showing them your strength. What would you do if the very thing that nearly killed you became the reason people turned you away? Let us know in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe for more real, powerful veteran stories like this one. Cassandra Wilson stared straight into the glass of the building's revolving doors, her reflection caught mid-blink. Clean navy blue blazer, subtle lipstick, ribbon bar pin on her lapel. The scar traced down the side of her throat like a bolt of lightning frozen in skin, still pink in places where the burn had never fully faded. She tugged the collar of her shirt slightly, not to hide it, just a reflex, an old habit from the first few weeks home. That instinct had faded in the years since, but every now and then, especially before moments like this, it still crept back. She exhaled. She wasn't afraid, but she was aware. 2 floors above, Carla Densmore tapped her pen impatiently on the glass surface of her desk, eyes narrowing at the monitor showing today's interviewees. "Next is Cassandra Wilson," she murmured, already scrolling through the resume. "Exceptional qualifications, 10 years as an Army combat medic, 3 deployments, Bronze Star. Certified EMT, trauma specialty, fluent in Spanish and Farsi, founder of a veteran women's support group." "Jesus," she whispered. "We're not running a VFW?" Her assistant, Elena, poked her head in. "Ms. Wilson just checked in. Want me to bring her back?" Carla gave a sharp nod. "Yeah, sure. Let's get this over with." She didn't dislike veterans, not officially. Her own father had served, but there was a line between honoring military service and indulging it. This was Landon Tech. Sleek, forward-facing, clean-cut. Their clients were Fortune 500s, not field hospitals in Fallujah. Carla looked again at the headshot attached to the resume. It had clearly been cropped to avoid showing the scar. She already knew what kind of image Cassandra might project, and Carla had to think about the company's look. She didn't want another messy HR review after the fiasco with Devon last quarter. Elena returned moments later, followed by the unmistakable sound of boots. Soft-soled, but practiced. Cassandra stepped in, her shoulders set, her expression composed but direct. She didn't smile first. She didn't apologize for being here. Carla didn't offer to shake hands. Instead, she motioned toward the leather chair on the other side of her desk. Cassandra sat, her hands resting in her lap, left wrist still bearing the faint tan line of a watch worn too many years in uniform. "You're early," Carla said, flicking her pen toward the clock. "I was raised that way," Cassandra replied, not quite smiling. "Time is a resource." Carla gave a clip hum of agreement and leaned back in her chair. "Ms. Wilson, your background is impressive. You've seen a lot, done a lot. And while we respect your service deeply, our team is very client-facing. We're image-conscious. We need someone who can represent Landon Tech's aesthetic at the executive level. Someone polished, approachable." "I understand," Cassandra said. A silence stretched between them like a drawn wire. Carla looked at the scar now, no longer pretending not to see it. "And do you mind if I ask? The injury?" Cassandra met her eyes squarely. "ID'd, 3rd deployment, Helmand Province." Carla nodded slowly. "I see." The next question never came, but Cassandra could already hear it. "Do you really think clients will respond well to someone who looks like they've just walked out of a war zone?" Carla stood. "That was it?" "I appreciate your time," she said briskly. "We'll be in touch." Cassandra didn't stand right away, not from hesitation, just from experience. She waited a beat longer, as if to confirm that yes, this was the part where they dismissed her, before she even spoke a word about the systems she'd helped rebuild in disaster zones or the tech triage initiative she'd led in Haiti after her discharge. She stood, nodded once, and extended her hand. Carla shook it, briefly, without warmth. Back in the lobby, Cassandra didn't look angry. She didn't pace. She didn't cry. She sat on the bench by the windows, pulled out her phone, and texted her friend Tasha one word, "Den." Tasha's reply came fast. "Want me to call someone?" Cassandra smiled despite herself. "Nah, not yet." Down the hall, Elena watched Cassandra leave through the glass doors. She had overheard enough interviews over the past 6 months to know when something wasn't right. This one left a sour taste. It wasn't the rejection, Elena had seen plenty of those, but the tone, the dismissal, the reason that hung unspoken in the air. She hesitated for a long moment, then pulled out her own phone and tapped a contact from a saved list. Jen.M. Whitaker, DOD Liaison Office. She stared at the number for a few seconds before deciding. She hit send. The phone didn't ring more than once. "Elena?" The voice on the other end was steady, low, and unmistakably military. General Marcus Whitaker hadn't worn the uniform in 3 years, but it clung to his cadence like dust to boots. "You don't usually call. What's wrong?" Elena kept her tone casual, but she knew he would catch the shift in her breath. "Sir, it's nothing urgent, just... Do you remember Cassandra Wilson?" There was silence, then the faint rustle of paper on the other end. "Of course I do," he said. "She saved my damn life." "Yeah, well," Elena said, glancing around the empty HR bullpen. "She interviewed at my company today, Landon Tech." "Carla handled it." "Handled it," he repeated, already not liking the sound of it. "He dismissed her," Elena said. "Didn't even let her get through her second answer. I think she saw the scar and stopped listening." Another pause. Then a quiet, unmistakable sigh, followed by the familiar scrape of a desk chair moving back. "I'll take care of it." Elena didn't smile. She just ended the call, stood, and went back to her computer like nothing had happened. She'd done her part. The rest would fall where it needed to. 2 miles across town, Cassandra leaned against the railing of a Veterans Resource Center rooftop, a paper coffee cup in hand and her phone dark on the bench beside her. Below, the late morning traffic thickened along Logan Avenue, indifferent to the shift her day had taken. She wasn't new to rejection. She'd faced worse than HR gatekeepers and tone-polished office executives. Still, it stung. She'd gone to Afghanistan with a field bag, a Bible, and the ability to stitch someone's chest closed with the kind of precision that kept hope alive. Now she was back home with her degrees, her service awards, and somehow still not enough to convince a woman in a silk blouse that she could manage a client onboarding process. The voice that interrupted her thoughts came low and familiar. "Heard you gave a great interview. Shame they didn't realize it." Cassandra turned her head. Tasha Ruiz stood behind her, holding a sandwich bag and a crooked smile. Navy medic, Iraq, and the only person in the city who could talk to Cassandra without small talk in the middle. "I didn't even get to the part about running the hurricane relief mobile units," Cassandra said. Carla couldn't look past the scar. Tasha handed her the sandwich. "Then that scar did you a favor?" Cassandra raised an eyebrow. "You don't want to work for someone who flinches at your face," Tasha said. "Let them disqualify themselves." "I just thought," Cassandra trailed off. "This one felt different, like I had a real shot." Tasha sat down on the bench. "You did. That's the problem. You were too real. Made someone uncomfortable. They don't know what to do with women who walk into rooms like they've already survived the worst day of their life." Cassandra didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at the sky, flat and colorless, the kind of gray that never committed to rain or clarity. "I keep thinking about all the people I trained," she said, "the lives I held in my hands. Now I'm out here, having to explain myself to people who've never held anything heavier than a conference binder." Tasha nudged her. "Yeah, but those people don't know who's watching." At that same moment, in a secure suite at the Pentagon, General Marcus Whitaker stood before a frosty glass window, phone tucked under his chin, as he read Cassandra's resume again from a printed copy, one he'd pulled the second Elena called. He remembered her not just as the medic who'd worked on him under fire, but as the soldier who'd dragged 2 wounded MPs behind a burnt-out Humvee during the ambush. He remembered the steadiness in her voice as she radioed for evac, the precision of her hands under mortar fire, the way she barked orders that made grown men move. And now she was being dismissed by someone who didn't even ask about that? No. That wasn't going to stand. He dialed the number listed on the Landon Tech website, asked for human resources, and was put on hold. Elevator music floated through the line. He imagined Cassandra sitting in some polished lobby, holding a folder filled with letters of recommendation from surgeons and commanders who owed their limbs and sometimes their lives to her skill. "Human Resources, this is Carla speaking." He smiled. "Carla Densmore?" "Yes, speaking. How can I help you?" "This is General Marcus Whitaker, Department of Defense, Office of Personnel Readiness. I believe you interviewed one of our candidates today." "Cassandra Wilson." A beat of silence, then a slight quiver. "Yes, I remember she—" "Let me be clear, Ms. Densmore. I'm not calling to discuss the outcome of an interview. I'm calling to inform you that Ms. Wilson is being offered a federal appointment under my command as of this afternoon. She will not be available for any future interviews with your company. In fact, I'll be speaking with your CEO shortly to explain why her presence on your shortlist should have been a cause for pride, not discomfort." "General Whitaker," Carla began, her voice tightening, "we have to take into account the way our candidates represent our brand." "She is the brand," he cut in sharply. "Resilience, discipline, sacrifice. That scar you saw? That scar is proof she showed up when others ran. If your brand has a problem with that, maybe you need a new one." Then he hung up. Back on the rooftop, Cassandra's phone buzzed. She looked at it, then blinked. "From Jen Whitaker. Text, I need you in D.C. by Friday, full salary, mission readiness team lead, details incoming." She showed it to Tasha. "Is that what I think it is?" Tasha asked. Cassandra nodded, slow at first. Then a breath escaped her. A real breath, not the kind she'd been managing all morning. Her eyes welled, but no tears fell. Just something softer behind them. Tasha grinned. 15 minutes. That's all it took. Cassandra leaned her head back and laughed, full-throated, unguarded. "Yeah," she said. 15 minutes and a general with a long memory. The silence in the Pentagon conference room was unlike any Cassandra had ever experienced. Not the silence of waiting for orders or listening for the next chopper under fire. This was a silence of respect. Every eye in the room followed her as she walked past the table, General Whitaker at the head, 2 civilian directors flanking him, and a row of analysts and deputies on laptops, ready to brief her on the project she'd been summoned to lead. She hadn't said a word yet. She didn't need to. They'd all read the file, the reports, the casualty saves, the trauma innovation training she pioneered. The scar no one mentioned. Not here. Not once. Whitaker stood as she approached, offering his hand. It was a firm shake, one veteran to another, and it said what words didn't need to. "Welcome home, Sergeant Wilson," he said. "Feels like it," she replied. When they sat, the others followed. The screen behind them flickered to life. A digital map lit up with yellow tags stretching across the U.S. Each tag represented a state hospital, military outpatient center, or rural trauma clinic struggling with post-COVID understaffing and veteran reintegration logistics. Her new mission wasn't military, but it was urgent. Build a rapid response strategy to embed experienced medics and nurses, veterans mostly, into these centers to bridge the gap between civilian shortfalls and military standard care. "You'll oversee team mobilization and operations," Whitaker said. "We're calling it Project Echo Shield." She tilted her head. "You came up with that?" He smirked. "You're the echoes, Sergeant. They still hear you." She read the room. Civilians nodding, military personnel quietly approving, not one single glance at her neck. Not one double take. These weren't people stuck on old biases. They didn't see a scar. They saw a résumé that bled service. By the end of the meeting, Cassandra had a badge, a government email, and a corner office overlooking the Potomac. But none of that mattered as much as what came with the job. Access. She now had a direct line to every military medical transition coordinator in the country, and the first thing she did after stepping into her office was call Tasha. "You know how you always said I'd end up changing policy?" Cassandra asked. Yeah, Tasha replied. Didn't think it had happened by Tuesday. I need you to send me everything you've got, names of vets you've worked with, especially the ones still trying to break into civilian medical role. Tasha paused. Cass, what are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time we flip the script. No more waiting for permission. We make our own doors. Tasha didn't ask anything else. She just said, copy that, and started forwarding contacts. For the next 3 days, Cassandra barely stopped to breathe. She moved through the corridors of bureaucracy like she was clearing rooms in Kandahar. Efficient, precise, unapologetic. She drafted operational frameworks for hiring, liaised with federal hospital systems, created pipelines for credentialing medics and corpsmen with battlefield experience. She even scheduled virtual interviews with veterans stuck in job limbo, people like her just months ago, so she could hear their stories firsthand. But there was one call she knew she needed to make. Not to Tosh, not to Whitaker, to Landon Tech. She didn't owe Carla Densmore a damn thing, but she owed Cassandra Wilson the closure. The receptionist picked up. Cassandra gave her name. She was transferred first to another assistant, then to a manager, and finally, after 15 long minutes, back to the same polished voice that had dismissed her without a glance. Hey, Wilson, Carla said. I didn't expect to hear from you. I'm not calling for an apology, Cassandra said, keeping her voice even. I'm calling to invite you to a panel. Carla hesitated. I'm sorry, what? I'm assembling a civilian military leadership panel next month in D.C. CEOs, HR execs, healthcare strategists. I thought your perspective might be educational. We'll be discussing hiring biases, trauma-informed leadership, and veteran talent pipelines. The panel is being broadcast nationally through the Department of Defense Media Network. There was an audible pause. Cassandra waited. I'll need to check my schedule, Carla said eventually. Take your time, Cassandra said. Just remember, 15 minutes is all it takes to change a narrative. She ended the call. The next morning, a message from Carla appeared in her inbox. Subject line, accepting invitation to panel discussion. No apology, no excuses. Cassandra didn't need either. That Friday, she flew out to Austin to tour a former VA clinic being reopened as part of Echo Shield's rollout. The facility had been mothballed for 3 years, but it would now serve as a hybrid training ground for medics transitioning to civilian trauma work, and Cassandra would be its first keynote speaker. She stepped onto the floor, still wearing boots, not heels. Her scar wasn't hidden. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady. I was told once that clients wouldn't respond to someone like me, she began, because I wear my history in plain sight. There was a murmur in the crowd. Some nodded. A few looked down. But I've learned something. That scar and the silence that followed it has done more to filter out the wrong rooms than a resume ever could. Leaned in, she continued. If you've ever been told you were too loud, too scarred, too intense, too intimidating, chances are you're exactly what someone's been waiting for. It's just a matter of finding the room that remembers what courage looks like. At the end, they rose, for her, not out of politeness, out of recognition. Outside the building, Cassandra stepped into the sunlight and found a group of trainees waiting to shake her hand. Some young, some her age, one who walked with a limp that mirrored the kind of pain you couldn't always describe. One of them, a tall redhead named Brian, asked quietly, "Do you think people like us ever really fit back in?" She looked him dead in the eye. "No," she said. "We're not supposed to fit back in. We're supposed to change it." The Pentagon auditorium was nearly full. Rows of chairs arched toward a raised platform lined with the kind of careful signage that only government contractors could design. Acronyms, muted navy colors, and a crisp American flag hanging perfectly still behind the center podium. Cameras had already been tested and retested, teleprompters adjusted, security briefings given. But none of that was what made Cassandra pause as she stepped backstage and looked out from the wings. It was the crowd. Veterans, HR executives, policy leaders, a few lawmakers. Half the audience wore service pins or medals discreetly fixed to lapels. The other half wore lanyards and tailored jackets, faces set in the polite mask of corporate diplomacy. They'd come for the panel, yes, but they were here because the name at the center of the program had started circulating weeks ago. Cassandra Wilson, founder of Echo Shield, former Army medic, keynote speaker. Cassandra smoothed her blazer, felt the small bump beneath the fabric. Her dog tags, still worn close to her heart. "You ready?" came the voice behind her. It was Whitaker, dressed in civilian attire now, but still carrying that immovable posture, that undercurrent of command. She smiled. "I've been ready." The moment she stepped up to the podium, the murmurs died. There was something about her presence. Not loud, not overly formal, just anchored, present, like she'd never left the field. She didn't look down at notes. She didn't use the teleprompter. She began by speaking about a scar. Not hers, not yet, but one she'd seen on a young Marine in Ramadi. A jagged wound along his jawline that scared every civilian medic who rotated through their camp. But not Cassandra. She remembered how he'd joked about it, how he wore it like a badge and kept morale high even during blackouts. "Deal with it. Didn't survive his third deployment," she said. Voice quiet but steady. "But I remember him every time someone flinches at a wound they don't understand." She spoke of reintegration, of silence, of applying for jobs in places where her combat experience was treated like a liability. She talked about systems built to look good on paper, but designed to keep people like her and thousands of others out of the rooms that shaped the future. Then she smiled. "But today," she said, "I'm in the room." There was a stillness afterward that wasn't uncertainty, it was reverence. When she stepped away from the podium, the applause didn't erupt so much as rise gradually, wave after wave, until it became undeniable. She nodded once and returned backstage, where Whitaker was already waiting, with a quiet look of pride in his eyes. "You hit a nerve," he said. "I hope so," she replied. "We need them to feel it." After a short break, the panel began. Cassandra was seated front and center, flanked by two former Fortune 500 CEOs, one VA director, and down at the far end, Carla Densmore. Cassandra hadn't seen her in person since the interview. Carla looked polished, poised, perhaps slightly more cautious now than before, but her eyes flickered when Cassandra sat down. Cassandra offered a small, measured nod. Carly returned it. When the moderator began asking questions about hiring veterans, trauma awareness, and bias, Cassandra listened. She let the others speak. Then, when it was her turn, she told the story of the woman who was once told she was too visible, too marked, too different. She told it in third person. No names, no call-outs. Just a truth that echoed in every row of that auditorium. "Sometimes," she said, "you can do everything right. Serve with distinction, pursue education, volunteer, give back, and still be reduced to one detail, one scar, one discomfort in someone else's gaze. That's why we need policies, not just pledges, because veterans don't need charity. We need opportunity. We need equity." When the panel ended, the crowd stood again, not for applause this time, but for her. The moment she walked down the steps, hands reached out. A handshake from a senator, a hug from a veteran's spouse, a quiet word from an HR rep who said, "You just changed my whole perspective." She stepped outside before the next session, needing air. And there, standing beneath the wide columns of the Pentagon courtyard, was Brian, the tall redhead from Austin. He was dressed differently now. Slacks, jacket, Echo Shield lanyard. "At the job," he said, grinning. "I figured," Cassandra said, returning the smile. "You look different." "Feel different," he said. "Giving me a leadership role at the center in Chicago said my field record was..." undervalued until now. Your speech helped. You helped, she corrected. I just reminded them to listen. As he walked off to join the others, she stood in the sun for a while. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Tasha. He crushed it. I'm watching from home, tears and all. Oh, and check this out. Landon Tech just posted a new policy about inclusive hiring practices for veterans and disabled applicants. Cassandra shook her head, half in disbelief. A second buzz. Another message. Helena says Carla's the one who pushed for it. Quiet. She let out a long, slow breath. Sometimes victory didn't look like a parade. Sometimes it looked like a memo. 15 minutes. That's all it had taken. To lose a job. To walk away ashamed. To feel dismissed. And 15 minutes later, everything had changed. Back inside, a junior officer waved her down. Ma'am, your 3 o'clock is waiting in the green room. She adjusted her blazer, smoothed the crease near her waist, and nodded. Let's go. As she walked through the corridor, scar visible, shoulders steady, dog tags gently tapping against her chest, she didn't feel the weight of rejection anymore. She felt power, because her voice wasn't just being heard now. It was shaping the system,